Welcome in, fans, to another episode of the Two Line Pass podcast. I'm Randon, here with me, Dustin, and we have a very special episode today. We have our first guest spot appearance on the show. We're bringing in Utah Hockey Club insider and beat writer Brogan Houston. He's a writer for the Deseret News Sports, and we are extremely excited to bring Brogan in, get his insights into the game, and talk to us. And Brogan, we really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
So, Brogan, reading your bio on the Des News page, it says that you're from British Columbia, Canada, and you went to school at BYU, Idaho. How does one go from Canada to Idaho to go to college? What was it that took you down that road?
You know what? It's honestly cheap tuition, and it's a good school and everything. They treated me very, very well the whole time I was there, but the initial draw was cheap tuition. The other thing was I applied for the right BYU campus, right, the Provo one, but that one's really hard to get into, and so I went to Idaho. My plan was originally to play for the hockey team at BYU, and then I didn't get in. You know, it's a club program, so you can't really get a scholarship or anything. So didn't get in, and then when I got to BYU Idaho, I was going to transfer, and then they pulled the plug on the team, and so then I, ended up not playing college hockey at all, and it actually worked out for the best, so it was good.
So from Idaho, BYU Idaho, and it sounds like ultimately the goal was to get to Provo, and the goal was to get to the BYU campus. What was it that brought you from Idaho down to Utah?
It was this job, honestly. So I graduated from my journalism program at BYU Idaho in July of last year, I guess. And then right around that time was when they started bringing the Arizona team all the way to Utah here. I started emailing around and saying, hey, if anybody needs a journalist that knows something about hockey, here I am. This was always the goal, was to work in the NHL eventually. I thought it was a pretty lofty goal, but timing worked out really well, and I had prepared right for it. Opportunity and preparation met each other, and that's what luck is, right? Luck is just when preparation meets opportunity, and so that's how it happened for me, and I was very fortunate that way.
I was curious because some of your first articles that you ever published on the Des News, one of them is about Vic, an AI bot running for mayor in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and another is a sloth fever outbreak striking Americans. So did you actually come here specifically for the Utah Hockey Club, and that was just kind of a couple of articles that you churned out waiting for hockey to pick up?
That's exactly it. You'll look at the dates on those articles. I think it's about August 19th or 20th, somewhere around there. And there's not much hockey going on at that time. So, they were just kind of getting me to learn the ropes of their systems. Every editing system is a little bit different. And they honestly, even now, yesterday, I published an article about, something other than hockey, and every now and then they just, they need somebody to do that. And that's what I did while I was in school. So I didn't do a ton of hockey coverage. I did a little bit of hockey coverage when I was in school, but a lot of my reporting then was just, hey, there's a drug bust, let's go cover that. Or, hey, there's an event going on in the park, let's go see if anybody has any cool stories. And, I've done enough general reporting that, I can kind of do that as the flex person when they need an extra person there.
Gives you the flexibility to do the things you need to do the things you want to do, and that's phenomenal. And we're glad that you're with us. We really enjoy the content that you're putting out about the Utah Hockey Club. And one thing I want to talk about, coming from British Columbia, obviously I think whether it's true or not, the perception is that all Canadians by birth are hockey fans. And one of the big narratives when Arizona came to Utah was about whether the state of Utah was ready for a hockey team, right? Are these fans ready to embrace a team? Can you kind of talk about the differences from what you saw growing up in British Columbia about how hockey's kind of ingrained there, and what you've seen out of the fan base here in Utah in the first season of NHL in Utah?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is just kind of the mainstream, what people watch, what people talk about, right? So in Canada, the mainstream thing is hockey, and everybody knows all the major stars in hockey. Nobody really knows the major stars in football or baseball. Basketball's a little bit different. That's definitely the number two in Canada. And here it's more, baseball, football, basketball. Everybody knows all the household names. Everybody can name every single team in the MLB. Nobody can do that in Canada, right? Maybe some people can. I don't know. But in Canada, hockey is the number one. Everything else is secondary to it. Whereas in the United States, in most parts of the country, it's the opposite. And so I think that's kind of where Utah had to arrive at, was this level of, okay, hockey's on the same level as basketball, or hockey's on the same level as college football, or whatever it is. I don't think we're quite at the college football level yet, but considering how the Jazz are doing this season, I think the hockey team and the Jazz are probably drawing pretty equal interest. I don't know that for sure, but from my conversations, it seems like that. And so I think Utah is getting to a point where, hey, yeah, we can have intelligent hockey conversations and talk about more than just our team, and we can understand all the rules and all that kind of stuff. So it is a process, but I think it's trending in the right direction. And if you give it another decade or so, I think it'll be right on that same level as all the other sports.
I sure hope so, and hopefully we're talking about a lot of exciting, positive moments, as this particular season hasn't been, it hasn't been any less than maybe what we expected. But kind of talking about from the frame of reference for Utah fans that are still learning hockey, as a hockey writer, do you ever find it difficult to find that balance between writing for new fans of the sport versus writing for decade-long fans, getting into like some of the analytics and things that maybe a very knowledgeable hockey fan knows about, but trying to balance that with not going over the heads of the new fans of Utah?
Yeah, and that's exactly why I do my articles, my game cover articles anyway, in that 3-tier system. So for anybody that's not familiar, all of my game cover articles, I do 3 different sections. One is Utah Hockey Club for dummies. The next one's Utah Hockey for casual fans. The next one's Utah Hockey for nerds. And so the dummies, it's not intended to offend anybody, but it's for those people that probably, started watching hockey this year. And so I usually explain the pretty basic things that happened in that game. Maybe there was a penalty shot. Okay, let's go over the rules of a penalty shot. How does that work? Something like that. The next section is, for the people that, they know what a penalty shot is. They know the basics, but maybe let's go over just something generally that happened that everybody would understand. And so that's the casual fans. And then the nerds, I usually dive into all the advanced stats and, talk, well, why is this guy paired with that guy on the defense groups or something like that. And so I kind of try and separate it into all those. And then as far as general articles go, I try to do a little bit of everything. So I'll do a rules explainer article talking about, hey, what is delay of game? And so it talks about that for the people that don't know what delay of game is. And then, every now and then I'll also do an article about like, hey, here's something that I noticed in my conversations with the players that maybe only a seasoned hockey fan would understand. I try and do a good balance of both, and hopefully I can have a wide enough net to catch everybody. There are lots of intelligent hockey fans here in Utah, and there's lots of people that, are picking it up for the first time. And so try to help everybody out when I can.
We love that you do. Dustin's our guy that is learning the game. He's been a lifelong sports fan and just getting into the ins and outs of hockey.
So I was like, all my life I've been a Dallas Stars fan, and so but I paid sort of casual attention to the NHL because, especially being in Utah, it's really hard to follow a team, especially like growing up in the 90s and early 2000s before social media exploded. Like it's hard to follow teams that closely. And one thing I've been curious about, especially from people that are coming from outside of the state, who were you a fan of growing up? Do you still follow that team? Do you consider yourself more of like a media member covering the Utah Hockey Club? Or do you consider yourself a true fan of the team now? And if you are a fan of the team, how hard has it been to sort of like almost close the door on who you grew up cheering for?
Yeah, I definitely try to stay as objective as possible. And, you'll probably notice that in my tweets, I don't, put everything in all caps and exclamation marks when Utah scores. I say, hey, Clayton Keller scored, And so I try to be as objective as possible. And that kind of helps me to not get too high or too low when I write things. So, if they have a really bad loss, I'm not bummed out that they had a really bad loss. I'm just like, hey, here's what needs to change, And so I think that kind of helps. To answer your question, I grew up a massive Vancouver Canucks fan, like had my room painted Canucks colors, all that kind of stuff. And I still hope that the Canucks do well, but I'm not out there, with the blue and green on, face paint on or anything like that. Like, I keep my jerseys tucked away in my closet here. And, I like I said, I still want them to do well just because they'll always have a place in my heart. But, at this point, I'm trying to be as objective as possible for sure.
Yeah. So the other night, the other night when they scored with, I believe it was 34 seconds left to force overtime, and then won it in overtime. They steal that 2 points in that wild card race. Like, you're covering the Utah Hockey Club, so you don't want to like brag in the face of anybody who's a follower of you, but you're kind of doing that like turn to the side, like, yes,
oh yeah,
okay, yeah, we got that one.
That one, I think, are you talking about the one against the Blues where Besser scored with I think it was 3 seconds or something?
I want to say it was the Ducks, I think, just a few days ago, but I may be wrong on who they were playing.
Okay. Well, yeah, I didn't watch that one, but we were watching the Blues one, and it was during the intermission of the Utah game, and so we're all sitting there on press row, and somebody's got it on his laptop there, and we're all, paying attention to it, and yeah, it was fun, but like I said, I kind of, my Canucks following is kind of vicarious through my family now, because all my family's big Canucks fans too. And so I kind of just, for the most part, pay attention to what they say. Particularly my dad, he'll message in our little group chat, and he'll say oh yeah, did you see what the Canucks did today? He was talking about the game against the Blue Jackets yesterday. I guess they blew a bunch of multi-goal leads and stuff. But yeah, no, I kind of follow it from a distance now. But that's about it.
It was actually our crack research team in my ears telling me it was the Devils the other day. They scored with 36 seconds left and then won in a shootout. So very close. 30 seconds away from escaping that game with no points, and then they steal 2 away from it in a very crucial wild card race.
There you go. That's big for Quinn. Quinn doesn't win against his brothers very often, but that's a good one for him.
It's funny that you're a Canucks fan. One of my earliest hockey memories is that Canucks Rangers Stanley Cup, and this was before I'd fully formed any fandom whatsoever. And I wanted the Canucks to win because I thought the Canucks jerseys were so much cooler than the Rangers jersey with that old black and kind of orange, across the front. So obviously that one didn't turn out in the Canucks way, but that's awesome.
I will say this, they do have the best jersey history of any team in the NHL, and I'll die on that hill. They've had basically every color that any NHL team has right now. They've had it as a color in their jersey history, and you can collect all of them, and it's awesome.
Hopefully we get a lot of jerseys here in Utah, not because we're changing the team name or anything. I don't want to see that every 2 days, but I would like to see a lot of, as the years go on, a lot of alternate jerseys and things like that, but that'll kind of come with the fandom. But let's talk about the Utah Hockey Club and this season as we wind down. Like I said at the top of the episode, the season is almost over. Playoffs pretty much out of reach now. I think the highest potential chance is 1.1% that we get into the playoffs at this point, but it's still been an incredible inaugural season. And from your perspective, have there been any season highlights for you, any special moments kind of that have stuck out more than anything else as you've covered this team?
Yeah, there's been some particularly loud games, some exciting ones that the fans are really into it. And so those ones have really stood out to me. Obviously the inaugural game was like that against Chicago there. But I would even argue that the one before that was even cooler. The preseason game that they played against the Kings at the Delta Center, that one was nuts. And maybe it was just because we weren't anticipating how loud it would actually get and how excited people would actually be. But some of those ones have been really, really cool to watch. The one against Philly where Dylan Guenther scored the OT winner with less than a second left, that one was really cool. I was honestly not even watching. I was already closing my laptop and putting it away because we have to get downstairs for the interviews pretty quickly. But that one, it was really cool. But yeah, just kind of some of those really, really big ones that Utah has done really well. And the fans just get into it. That's what really makes it, is the fan participation. So it's been really cool.
Yeah, we've been fortunate enough to go to a few games, and it's that the Delta Center is so unique. Obviously, a lot of discussion surrounding the obstructed views and everything, comparing it to what Arizona had to go through early in their franchise and here. But views aside, the verticalness of the Delta Center really allows for that sort of crowd noise, and it's just such a big, imposing. And have you been on the ice at the Delta Center? Does it seem as vertical and imposing as maybe some of the other NHL arenas you've been in?
Yeah, for sure. I get what you're saying, and I agree with you completely. I haven't actually been on the ice. I've been down where the benches are and, up against the glass and that kind of stuff, just as I wander around, watching practice and whatnot. And yeah, it is the steepest NHL arena that I've been to. I haven't been to nearly every NHL arena quite yet, but it really hit me when we had watched a couple games at the Delta Center, and then we flew to New York and we watched the 3 games out there, the Rangers, Islanders, and Devils. And I was like, wow, these are really, what's the word, like horizontal, the seating compared to the Delta Center. Like in the Delta Center, it's almost like you're climbing a ladder to get up to your seats comparatively. So yeah, I do think it lives up to the hype. The other thing is Ryan Smith talks about the tin roof being like reflective of the sound. So, it just gets trapped in there and it bounces back at you. I'm not a sound, engineer or anything like that. So I don't know if that's true. I can't confirm it for myself, but I'll take Ryan at his word there. I think that makes sense. Anyway.
Well, this is a bit of an aside here, but you mentioned whether or not you've been on the ice. One thing that they do in the Delta Center, and they do this for the Jazz, is they will have like a basketball game for the media on the floor of the Delta Center, where the media gets to come and they get to play on the floor and play against some legends and stuff like that. Have you heard of them doing anything like that for media members playing a game of hockey on the Delta Center ice? Because I know, like, obviously you have a history playing hockey. Cole Bagley's has played hockey before, so I think there'd be some media members that'd be interested in that. Have you heard any rumblings of them putting together something like that?
Yeah, we were actually talking about this the other day. We were waiting for, a player to come out or whatever. We were all like, hey, like, what would it be like if we did that? But I think that's about as far as it's gone. I wouldn't expect to see that happen. I do think the Canucks do that. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they do. So it's not unheard of. But as far as the core media goes, a lot of them don't play hockey, and so it would probably be a little bit of a liability more so than basketball. Excuse me, just because ice and the skill that it takes to be on ice safely and that kind of stuff. So. I wouldn't expect it to happen. I would love it to happen. I think it would be really cool. We did play drop-in, a bunch of us media guys the other day. We all went to the, what's it called, the Salt Lake or sports complex, something like that, the SLC sports complex. Yeah, we went out there and we played drop-in, and it was kind of cool. I got to score a goal on Jay Stevens, so that's my claim to fame for this week. And yeah, it was good.
Hey, speaking of drop-in games, have you heard anything about the construction of the new? So they've got they're going to do the new training facility and everything like that out by where the Southtown Mall is. Mm-hmm. Have you heard anything about that development in terms of the scheduling and things? And also curious, not for nothing, but are practices ever open to the public to go see?
Yeah, so I'll answer that second one first. I wish that they were more often. They've done a couple of them, but they don't do it on a regular basis, and it's usually just been for season ticket holders. But I think that's something that maybe they will consider when they have a proper practice facility. The one that they use right now isn't really set up for a lot of people to be there. I don't know if you've been to the Utah Olympic Oval, but it's got like 2 sections of bleachers. One section is exclusively for the people that work for the team, so the general managers will all sit up there, and all the team TV people and radio people, they'll all be on that side, and then all of us independent media will be on the other side. And so there's not a lot of space for people to come and sit, and it's just not really set up for hundreds of people to be there in the first place. And so I think possibly when they get this new practice facility open, maybe they will consider doing stuff like that. I don't know what the seating situation is there. I haven't been inside it yet to see, but that's a possibility for sure. I think a lot of teams do have open practices. If anything they can do to get people closer to the players, I think is a positive thing. As far as the construction of the practice facility goes, they're being, I don't want to say tight-lipped. They aren't releasing anything on it yet, and so I've reached out at various points throughout the year and said, hey, like, any updates, or can we go take a tour, take a video camera there and see? And they've always said no, nothing against them for it. That's their choice, but I just don't have any updates on it yet.
Well, we'll hopefully get some soon, and I'm excited for that for the team and obviously the visiting teams. It seems like there's been a lot of positivity. A lot of the guys you guys have talked to from opposing teams giving high praise to Utah and the job that Ryan Smith has done with the team. So speaking about the team, is there any favorite guys that you've picked out, and any of the players you like to follow, or have any fun interviews or anything like that, your favorites?
Yeah, you know what? The bulk of the guys are really good guys, and I think that's something that hockey really has going for it, right? Like that's something cool about hockey is almost everybody is really, really nice, really good. There are some players that, they're just quiet people, and so maybe I don't have the opportunity to talk to them as much, or some guys tend to slip out of the locker room before we get in there, that kind of thing. So there are guys that I'm not necessarily buddy with or anything like that. But, there are some guys that I like to joke around with. Ian Cole's one of them. He's always good for a good quote. I always say he likes to answer the question you've asked and the next question you're about to ask, so you don't even have to ask the second one. So he's a good go-to guy. Kesselring's really thoughtful in his responses, so I like talking to him. Josh Doan is probably the most polite person I've ever met, hockey or otherwise. I think he was raised right for sure. Maverick Lamoureux, when he's up, he's always super cheerful, super happy. So those are the ones that come off the top of my head. Not to say anything against anybody else. Everybody's treated us well as far as players go. So yeah, and I'll also shout out Chris Armstrong, the president of the team. Every time that he sees us in the hallways, he makes it like he'll sometimes like pass us and then go out of his way to turn back around and say like, "Hey, Brogan, how's it going?" And just kind of shoot the breeze for a minute and that kind of stuff. And so I'll also just pull him out and just say like, "Hey, yeah, great guy."
I love it. I do have a question too about kind of being a writer for the NHL. Obviously, the players across all sports have some very memorable interviews, but at least from my perspective, I feel like NHL players are kind of known for default canned responses to questions, just stick to the game plan, put pucks in the back of the net, kind of things. Do you ever think about like how you're going to craft a question to try to get a more non-canned response from them? Or is it kind of just, yeah, these guys know us and they're going to just answer how they're going to answer?
Yeah, you definitely have to pick your battles, but there are some that you certainly should push a little bit further and say like, hey, like, what do you mean by that? Or like, can you explain it further, or that kind of thing. Or sometimes you ask a really specific question that's like, hey, did you do this? Or, that kind of thing. But like I said, you don't want to push so hard that your welcome expires. You don't want to be that guy that everybody says, oh, it's Brogan asking a question. Come on, and so, pick your battles, but every now and then, yeah, push a little bit further and try and get something more meaningful. But most of the guys, like, Ian Cole, for example, Michael Kessering, Sean Dursey's another one that I didn't mention, but those guys they'll give you really, really good, thoughtful answers. They shy away from those pucks in deep type of answers, put our heads down and work, that kind of answer. They steer away from those. And so that's why I appreciate talking to those guys a lot.
All right. Well, speaking of questions that might have some difficult answers, and obviously I'm not going to ask you to like tell us they need to like just completely waive this guy or cut this guy, get rid of that guy. So Utah they've taken a step forward versus what they did as a franchise in Arizona last year. I believe they finished last season with like 77 points. They already have 76 this year, so they've obviously taken a step. They're more than likely going to come up short of and just miss the playoffs, but what does this team need to do as a franchise to take that next step to kind of firmly entrench themselves into the playoffs and no longer be a fringe kind of wild card team?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, right now their top six guys, a lot of them are more middle six guys at this point in time. But I think a year or two from now, a lot of those middle six guys will be bona fide, stars in this league. Dylan Gunther and Logan Cooley especially. And I think Josh Doan can go from that kind of middle six to top six for sure, like bona fide. I think, if those guys take that next step, that's probably what the team needs. And what I'm talking about there is them going from maybe 20 goal, 30 goal, 50 to 60 point range and taking them up to the 40 goal, 100 point range. If those guys can take that step, you'll all of a sudden get almost twice as many goals as you're getting from them before. You put that on the scoreboard in any game and you get more points. Like, that's how it works. And so once those guys kind of take that step, I think they'll be in a really good spot. I also think that they have a chance to do some big things in the summer this year. I don't know if it's all going to be unrestricted free agency. There's not a ton of, big guys on the market this year. I've heard names like Mitch Marner from other media people, not from the team. Don't go reporting that I said that from the team. I've heard speculation, I should say, that people want to get Mitch Marner. I would kind of be surprised if that's the route that they wanted to take. I wonder about some big trades in the offseason. I wonder about maybe even some restricted free agency. Take some offer sheets out there and see who you can pull in. And, if they can do that, they might be able to maybe fill that second line left winger spot that, Carconi's been there, Yamamoto was there last night, Kerfoot's been there. Like they don't really have like a solid guy to put there. And so if they can fill that spot well and then maybe shore up the defense a little bit, depending on the goaltending situation, maybe they go out and get a 1B kind of guy. And then, all of a sudden you're getting a couple more points here and there, in each game and you're, keeping points off the board for the other team because you got maybe a more solid goaltending situation. Maybe your defense is a little bit healthier than they were this year. And all of a sudden you steal 5 or 6 games, and that's 10, 12 points. That's what you need to launch yourselves from this current spot into the playoffs. And so I think that kind of as you shore up all those little gaps between the lineup there, and then all your players develop as a group, I think you're going in the right direction at the very least.
Talking about the specifically, you mentioned Kyler Yamamoto coming up. I know when it was first talked about that he was recalled from the AHL, I think there was a lot of fan shock and like, oh no, what happened? Who's injured? And kind of not thinking about. Even I did not realize that after the trade deadline, you can have more than 23 rostered guys on your team as long as you're within the salary cap. I didn't realize that, so I was right there thinking, okay, if somebody got called up, that must mean that there's an injury. But now that that's a possibility, and if the playoffs really are out of reach, do you see with the last few games, like, is there ever a chance that like someone like Maverick Lamoureux comes back to kind of see, what the year in the AHL has done for him? Or is it just still more valuable for a guy like that to just continue to get a lot of top line minutes in the AHL versus, maybe some just token minutes in the NHL?
Yeah, a lot of teams do that around this time of year, especially if they know that they're, not going to make the playoffs. And I wrote it in my article last night that I wouldn't be surprised to see some of those guys get called up like that. Specifically, I think right now, depending on Olli Maatta's situation, we might be able to see Maximilian Zuber come up from the AHL there. I don't know the extent of Maatta's injury yet, but he left the game yesterday. He didn't finish it out. And so if he's out for, maybe the rest of the season or maybe just a couple games, they'll need a left-hand defenseman to fill that spot. All of their extra defensemen right now shoot right. So the obvious one would be Zuber. He comes up. I think he played 1 game last year, but he's got close to half a point per game in the AHL this year. He got called up in November. He didn't get to play a game before he got sent back down. So I think that he's probably one guy to watch out for. Lamoureux, I think that, there's a logical reason to put him in there. Now, if they're still trying to push for the playoffs, maybe they don't put him in yet. But, once they're officially eliminated, maybe they do, or maybe they go against everything I'm saying and just call him up anyway and just put him in that left-hand spot, because why not? Or maybe switch Ian Cole over to the right side. Scratch that part, but maybe they call up Maverick Lamoureux. Maybe it's some of the other guys that have done well in the AHL this year, and they just want to give them a shot.
All right, Brogan. This one's the big one. This question is the question that everybody wants to know. Actually, it's a 2-parter. So the first part is, when are you going to drop your BYU allegiance and join the winning side and come to the University of Utah? That's what the fans really want to know.
So here's the thing is, BYU rejected me. I went to BYU Idaho. So I don't really have that allegiance. They're completely different schools. They carry the same name, but everything's different about them. So I'm not opposed to the Utes at all. I'm also not opposed to the Cougars, but I'll cheer for both. I like Utah.
Well, welcome to the winning side. That's what we want to hear. But last, just so in your free time, right? We got the off season coming up. Is there anything you like to do coming into, obviously Utah and Idaho share a very similar kind of thing. Do you do a lot of outdoors at all, or kind of like what does Brogan Houston do when there's not NHL hockey going on?
Yeah, pretty much everything outdoors. I like hiking, camping, golfing, that kind of stuff. And my wife and I play a lot of pickleball when we get the chance. And in BYU Idaho, we played a lot of spike ball, just because it's super easy to get a group together and go and play spike ball, and it's pretty easy to learn. Yeah, so just kind of all those outdoor things. If it gets you outdoors, it's probably a good thing. We've got a golden retriever. He's about a year old now, and so we took him hiking last weekend, and it was still like snowy on the trails and stuff, and so that was really cool. That was his first time like actually playing in the snow, because we didn't get enough snow to like let him go out and play this winter. And so yeah, that was kind of cool. He was like rolling around in the snow. He didn't even know what to think about it. So all that stuff that gets you outdoors, I like it. Just keep you active, keep you healthy and having fun.
Well, that's awesome. We expect some golden retriever pics on the Twitter feed coming up here.
Yeah, I've posted a couple times this year, but I should definitely do more. He's doing cute things probably 75% of the day. My camera roll is full of cute dog pictures for sure.
I love it. We appreciate your time. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything you want to say before we get out of here?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Thanks for having me on. It's been fun.
I'm sure everybody listening to this, if they're following us, they're probably already following you on your socials. But if you want to, like, drop your socials. Where can people follow you on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, anywhere you want it? And what can people expect from you the close out of the season and into the off season?
Yeah, sure. Follow me on Twitter. It's at Houston__ Brogan. And I don't really have any other social media that's like, for the purpose of hockey stuff. So, but definitely like follow my articles on Deseret News. You just go onto the Deseret News website and there's the sports tab and the Utah Hockey Club tab. And so you can see all the updates there. I post all my articles on Twitter as well. And yeah, I kind of, like I said, I kind of just write everything, geared towards every level of fan. And so whether you are new to hockey or you've been watching it, your entire life, there's something there for you, hopefully. And if there's anything that anybody ever wants me to write about, just shoot me a Twitter DM and I'll see what I can do.
The next time we have any AI running for governor, mayor, president, senator, I'll expect an article on that as well.
Got it.
It's only a matter of time in these crazy times we have. But hey, thanks so much for joining us again, Brogan Houston. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time. We hope the fans have enjoyed it. We'll drop some links down to the articles and to the socials as well. But hey, guys, thanks so much for listening. Still a lot to play for this season. Brogan, thank you very much. Dustin, thank you for your time. And we'll see you next time.